I now call the planning board meeting to order at 6:09. Okay, do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
I motion to adopt the agenda.
I second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to discuss, I'd like to make an adjustment to the agenda so that we could move the planning rezoning application to where?
You would move discussion for the training video above new business.
Okay. We're gonna make, move to, I think we should make item number 6, become item 5, and item 5 become item 6.
There you go. Perfect.
I think you're out of order because there's a motion and a second. You have to vote on the first motion before you can make a second motion.
To adopt the agenda?
With changes.
There's a motion on the table
We
to
have to
adopt the agenda.
as shown.
As shown.
So that can be voted on, and then we can do
Then we have to vote no.
So if you want. So you can make it.
All right. The motion on the floor is to adopt the agenda as written. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Motion failed. Do I hear a motion to change the order of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to change the agenda by moving item number 6, make that become item number 5, and item number 5 will then become item number 6.
Okay.
I
Is
s-
there a second?
I second it.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Did everybody get the minutes from last meeting?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving? Aye. Okay. At this time, are there any citizens that would like to make public comment?
Daniel Soy has signed up. I don't know if he prefers to speak in the public comment section or in the rezoning section.
Okay. There being no citizens for this public comment, we're going to move on to discussion and watch the APA video on zoning ordinances presentations for planning officials. Okay. Any questions about what we read, or what we saw?
Do you have any general questions on zoning?
Okay, there being no questions, we can move on to new business, which is the rezoning application of RZ 24-00001, 1090 New River Inlet Road, from R20 to R15.
Since we have some new folks here, and we also are addressing the changes in 160D for rezonings, I'd like to kind of give you a prelude before I get into the staff report. One of the requirements of the planning board, after you hear the staff report and the applicant's presentation, is to put your recommendation in writing in a plan consistency and reasonableness statement. And I included that some excerpts in a handout that was that would be before you. I also shared that with the applicant and with his architect, Mr. Toby Keaton. So I have drafted, at the end of the staff report, I've drafted a plan of consistency and reasonableness statements. Try saying that 3 times fast. I'll try to do better. I drafted that as part of my recommendation to the planning board. You are free to use it or to discard it or to use part of it in your when it comes to the discussion part and the deliberations and how you would like to craft or develop your statements. The recommendation from the planning board to the Board of Aldermen, of course, is non-binding. Even though it is in writing, it is still a recommendation. But it is to document that the comprehensive plan was, that the planning board considered the comprehensive plan, which we adopted our Campbell land use plan as our comprehensive plan. So we'll use those 2 terms interchangeably, but I'll try to stick to comprehensive plan or comp plan. And so when it goes to, and I think in, there's thinking the handout. Might have been the whole one. Get back to the one. I did a little short one for you guys. Let me borrow one. Yeah, you have it. Yeah, I kind of gave you guys the boilerplate of reader, so I just condensed mine a little. On that first page where it talks about statutory authorization, and it mentions 160D 605 and 604 planning board review and comment. That's the obligation of the planning board, or what to expect from the planning board. And then also for the localities that are required to have a CAMA land use plan, like North Topsail Beach, and adopting the CAMA land use plan as our comprehensive plan, for a plan that also serves as a land use plan mandated by the Coastal Area Management Act. General Statute 160D 501 also clarifies that the plan amendment is not effective for CAMA purposes until it goes through the CAMA plan review and approval process. Okay.
Can I ask you a question? So does that mean that CAMA, if we go to recommend the rezoning, that CAMA also has to approve the rezoning?
It has, not the same CAMA permitting officer, but the rezoning does need to be submitted to CAMA. And I had sent an email to the individual that I've worked with in the past. I don't believe that I got a response back from him today to see, what the procedures, what Division of Coastal Management's procedures were relative to 160D. So as soon as I get a response, I will share that with the planning board and with the applicant as well. So, and in the CAMA land use plan, in section 6, there's also a section, a couple of paragraphs on the page 6-1 and 6-2, the first 2 pages of section 6. And it discusses, the headline is the continuing planning process, and consider the following in deliberation for all zoning petitions. And then it has several little bullet points. And then that last worksheet that I gave you, or the last sheet that's in that little 3 pages that I gave you, is I turned it into a worksheet, but it's from the 160D guidance from UNC School of Government for drafting a consistency and reasonableness statement. It looks a little more formal. It does not have to be that formal. But the end goal is that whatever your recommendation is, that you document that you compared the rezoning application to the comprehensive plan. Was it consistent with our plan? Was it not consistent with the plan? And if not, or if so, what specific areas? And then also the reasonableness statement, whether or not it's reasonable, whether or not it's in the public interest. And then if so, why? If not, why? It's just basically asking you, and that could be a sentence, it could be 2 sentences. And so at the end of it, when you go to make a motion, I would anticipate that the motion would be to either recommend approval or recommend denial. And then, based on what what the consensus of your consistency and reasonableness statements were. But I would recommend that you work through those 2 statements first, and then make your motion to approve, not approve, and then to adopt those 2 statements. And that's what formally would be presented to the Board of Aldermen in the staff report for the public hearing for Mr. Soy's rezoning application. Are there any questions on that? It's something new, so I just want to make sure that we're all okay on that. So I'll go ahead, without any further ado, if there's not any other questions, I'll go ahead and try to get through the report as quickly as I can. And then I'll turn it back over to the chair, and then the chair can recognize Mr. Keaton on behalf of Mr. Soy. And Mr. Soy is also here if he would like to speak. So the property owner is Daniel Soy. The deed, Onslow County tax parcel report, and Onslow County appraisal card are included as attachments 1 through 3, which are pages 8 through 14 in the staff report. Michael Ross Kirsting Architecture, PA, is the applicant on behalf of Daniel and Rebecca Soy. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Is that right? The property owner is requesting the subject property at 1090 New River Inlet Road, North Topsail Beach, to be rezoned from R20 residential to R15. The application is included as Attachments 4 through 6 is the application, the letter from Mr. Keaton, and the recent plat of survey from Mr. Garrett Kennedy. And those are to be found on pages 15 through 24. So to the, there's a little color insert. Figure number 1, the blue represents R20, and if you can see the red outlined parcel, that's Mr. Soy's parcel. To the north is conditional use R15 with the condition being single family. To the east is R20, to the south is Atlantic Ocean, and to the west is R20. Existing zoning, as I said, is R20. Currently the property is vacant. There's no site improvements. For the size of the property in 1992, based on map book 28, page 85, which is included as attachment 7, the lot was 26,630 square feet. When Mr. Kennedy surveyed the property August 9th of 2023, the lot was 15,606.8 feet. His survey is included as attachment 6. The previous owner, Mr. Eglin, had submitted a CAMA minor application back in 2007. However, the permit was denied as the proposed development did not meet the required CAMA setbacks. That's from an email included as attachment 8 on pages 26 and 27. The current owner, Mr. Soy, purchased the property May 19th, 2021, as recorded in deed book 5466, page 310. Access is available from New River Inlet Road, State Road 1568, and that's evidenced by the survey by Mr. Kennedy as attachment 6. The former 40-foot access easement shown in map book 28, page 85, has been abandoned by the filing of deed book 5873, page 486, which was filed November 17th of 2022. Deed book 5873, page 489, as attachment 10. Deed book 5873, page 533, which is attachment 11, which was filed 11/17/2022, by and between Mr. Soy and his neighbors, Mr. Clifford Cuniff and Mr. Michael Francis Fleming. 15 feet of the 30-foot roadway right-of-way indicated in map book 5, page 48, which is included as attachment 12, was vacated by the withdrawal and revocation roadway dedication by deed book 6002, page 430, which is included as attachment 13. That was recorded July 20th of 2023. The area is served by Onwassa Water and Sewer. The property is within the special hazard flood area. The flood zone is AE and VE with base flood elevations ranging from 12 to 15 feet. It's in Cobra LO6 as of October the 1st, 1983. The property is within CAMA's Ocean Hazard AEC area of environmental concern with an erosion rate of 3 feet and a small structure setback of 90 feet. On the survey by Mr. Kennedy, dated August 9th of 2023, the first line of stable natural vegetation was marked over a year ago on June 27, 2023, and should be updated. All right. For the compatibility with the comprehensive plan, promoting the development of properties that have been deemed unbuildable due to either state or local development regulations is inconsistent with policy statement number 25, in which the town has adopted. The town, in an effort to protect the eco-friendly environment that the town has established over the years, may aim to secure lots through either acquisition, grant-funded purchase, or donation. These lots may be secured as open space easements in perpetuity. Special attention will be given to acquire properties that have been deemed unbuildable to either state or local development regulations. In policy statement number 52, the town supports the relocation of structures endangered by erosion if the relocated structure will be in compliance with all applicable local, state, and federal policies and regulations, including the town's zoning and subdivision ordinances. Relocation of structures should comply with density standards outlined within the future land use map section of this plan. The application is inconsistent with the future land use map low density requirement. allowable density is 2 dwelling units per acre or 1 dwelling unit per half acre. The proposed density for the rezoning is 1 dwelling unit or 2 dwelling units for 0.36 acres. Policy statement number 55, the town supports the land use densities that are specified on page 4-13 of this plan. Through enforcement of the zoning ordinance, these densities will minimize damage from natural hazards and support the hazard mitigation plan. The future land use map 11B on page 418 indicates property is classified as low density. Future land use compatibility matrix 415 R20 is generally consistent with low density residential. The proposed amendment R15 is generally consistent with both low and medium density. However, in this case, with the lot size as it is, the density is going to be closer to medium density. Compatibility with the UDO, the lot meets the minimum dimensional requirements for R15 zoning pursuant to the UDO Table 5-1 dimensional requirements. For the response standards, I'm going to read through the conditions, and I'll read the statement by the applicant from the application, and then I'll read my response or my analysis. My analysis on this application is in response to the policy guidelines outlined in section 3.08.06, action by the planning board, which was passed 7/1/2021. For every proposed amendment, supplement, change, modification, or repeal of this ordinance shall be referred to the planning board for its recommendation and written report to the Board of Aldermen. The following policy guidelines shall be followed by the planning board concerning zoning ordinances, and no proposed zoning amendment will receive favorable recommendation unless, number one, the proposal will place all property similarly situated in the area in the same category or in appropriate complementary categories. The statement from the applicant is that the lot exists in a small block of R20 zone properties, which is surrounded by R5, R10, and R15 blocks. Thus, the proposed R15 zoning would be compatible in this area. And he asked you to see the attached letter from the applicant for further information. The owner of the subject property has approached the owners of 1104, 1078 New River Inlet. Is that a typo? Should that have been 10? That's not 1104.
One's on either side of us.
Is it 11? But it's not 1104. Shouldn't that be 10? Oh, 1104. Sorry, never mind. I should have put my numbers different. Adjoining properties on either side of the property, currently zoned R20, who have stated that they would be amenable to the requested zoning, thus avoiding so-called spot zoning. So my response to that, that is not included in the written portion of the staff report, but continues to go on. Rezoning other properties would be required to meet rezoning of the other properties would be required to meet the same requirements as this application. It is not sound planning principle to rezone other properties merely to circumvent or avoid spot zoning classification. The immediate area consists of R20 zone properties, the oceanfront properties along New River Inlet Road, 1070, 1074, 1078, 1090, and 1105. Should that be 1104? New River Inlet Road, the properties on the sound side are and separated by a bridge. An elevated portion of New River Inlet Road, State Road 1568, are zoned CUR5 with single family only. Number two, there is convincing demonstration that all uses permitted under the proposed district classification would be in the general public interest and not merely in the interest of an individual or small group. The statement from the applicant is the oceanside properties along New River Inlet Road corridor are predominantly R15, R10, R5. The zones require a 20-foot front yard setback. Thus, rezoning from R20 to R15 in this area will provide more consistent streetscape as well as provide better view corridors for adjacent oceanfront properties. Relaxing the street side setbacks also allows structures to be built further away from the fragile dune environment and further upland away from storm surges. It also decreases the amount of impervious surfaces needed as driveways and other hardened access surfaces from the street may be shortened. Staff's analysis is that the future land use map, page 11B, land use map 11B, page 4-18, classifies the property and the immediately surrounding lots as low-density residential. Future land use compatibility matrix 415 R20 is generally consistent with low-density residential. R15 is generally consistent with both low and medium density. Low being building units per acre. Medium density, I believe, is 4 building units per acre. Appendix A, page 7 of 7, North Topsail Beach zoning district indicates R20 is single-family residential. R15 is single-family residential or duplex. Number 3, there is convincing demonstration that all uses permitted under the proposed district classification would be appropriate in the area included in the proposed change when a new district designation is assigned. Any use permitted in the district is allowable so long as it meets the district requirements and not merely uses which the applicants state they intend to make of the property involved. So the statement from the applicant is the proposed single-family use is compatible with surrounding uses. And again, the planning board must consider all uses, not just the use provided by the applicant. Staff's analysis is the purpose of R15 is to provide for single-family and duplex residential developments where central water or sewer, but not both, are available. And that's referenced in UDO section 3.0404. The purpose of R20 district is to allow for single-family only or low-density residential and recreational purposes to be protected from undesirable future development, and residential developments not having central water and sewer will occur in sufficiently low density to ensure a healthy environment. We also have to consider the demand on infrastructure, not just the utilities, but also the roadway access, emergency services. Number 4, there is convincing demonstration that the character of the neighborhood will not be materially and adversely affected by any use permitted in the proposed change. Statement by the applicant is the increased buildable area afforded by the 20-foot front yard setback associated with an R15 zone will allow for a structure to be in keeping with the architectural proportions of the surrounding homes. Staff's analysis is if the adjacent structures were damaged or destroyed greater than 50%, they could only be rebuilt if they met the current requirements as well. In the adjacent structures at 1074, built in 1993, and 1078, New River Inlet Road, built in 2000, at that time met the 40-foot easement right-of-way, which has since been abolished. The planted trees and parked cars within the easement limit the emergency vehicle access behind the bridge. Rezoning from R20 to R15 and shortening the front setback from 30 feet to 20 feet would further restrict emergency vehicle access to 1078 New River Inlet Road at the elevated bridge. The former 40-foot access easement shown on map book 28, page 85, has been abandoned by the filing of the deed book references that I had mentioned before and his neighbors. I don't know if this included, the utility lines behind that bridge, but certainly the abandonment and the shortening of the right-of-way is going to restrict emergency vehicle access, particularly for the structure that's in the middle behind that bridge, to where that would limit the fire truck's ability to fight the fire or provide emergency services from the bridge rather than being able to get closer to the property. The proposed change is in accord with any land use plan and sound planning principles. The statement from the applicant is that the proposed R15 zoning designation is deemed generally compliant in low-density residential use recommended by the CAMA land use plan. the currently non-conforming lot would better reflect the required dimensional standards of the proposed R15 zone. The lot is surveyed at 15,606.8 square feet of the North Topsail Beach zoning ordinance. And staff's analysis is the previous owner, Mr. Eglin, submitted an application in 2007. However, the CAMA minor permit was denied as the proposed development did not meet the required setback. The challenge is the effect of the erosion rate in the area of 3 feet per year, which is used to calculate the CAMA setback from the first line of stable natural vegetation or from the static line. So 3 times 30 equals 90 feet. From 1993 to 2023, 30 years, the platted size of the lot, as measured from the approximate mean high water line, which has also receded, has been reduced from 26,630 square feet to 15,606.8 square feet, or 41.4% of that lot has been lost due to the accelerated erosion rate in that area and the receding approximate mean high water line. Comparing the approximate mean high water line from a Plata survey by Charles Riggs dated July 19, 2000, and the shared boundary leg by the survey by Mr. Kennedy on June 16th of 2021. In 2000, the distance to the mean high water line was 171.15 feet, and in 2021, it was 109.2 feet, which indicates a loss of 61.9 feet in 21 years. Let me say that again. 61.9 feet in 21 years. So we're used to hearing this, the CAMA setback 6 feet from the first line of stable natural vegetation, and that 60 feet is based on a 2-foot annual erosion rate. In this case, where it's 3 feet, that matches up with the actual measurement, comparing those two surveys being 61.9 feet in 21 years. And also the methodology would be consistent with Mr. Eglin's inability to obtain a CAMA minor permit back in 2007. This is not a case where the size of the lot preceded the original zoning classification, and where the request for rezoning is to correct the rezoning for R15 to match the 15,600 square feet. 1074 was built in 1993, 1078 was built in 2000. Since 2007, the effects of a 3-foot per year erosion rate have become and remain evident. Staff's recommendation is that the planning board conduct a review of the proposed zoning map amendment. The planning board, number 2, that the planning board advise and comment on whether the proposed action is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and any other officially adopted plan that's applicable. I would also refer you to the handout that I gave you for the CAMA land use plan continuing planning process. That's page 6-1 and 6-2. Number 3, that the planning board provide written recommendation to the Board of Aldermen that addresses plan consistency and other matters as deemed appropriate by the planning board. And number 4, consider the following consistency and reasonableness statement based upon property history, compatibility with the comprehensive plan, the UDO, Unified Development Ordinance, response to standards contained in the staff report, as well as the applicant's submittal and any comments that the applicant made Toby, what's your last name? Keaton, sorry. I got the Toby part. That Mr. Keaton or the owner, Mr. Story, may make this evening. For the consistency and reasonableness statement, the proposed zoning amendment is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And I have 4 bullet points here, but you could just as easily pull out the entire section in the staff report and copy it word cut and paste. compatibility with the comprehensive plan where it does, we're promoting the development of properties that have been deemed unbuildable due to either state or local development regulations is this inconsistent with policies 25 and policy statement number 52, as well as the applicant is inconsistent with future land use map low density requirements, and that's policy statement number 55. And I read policy statement 52. I think I put them in there. I think it was just organized a little bit better in the staff report. 25, 52, and 55. Okay. The proposed zoning amendment is not reasonable and not in the public interest because it does not support the comprehensive plan policies above and because the previous owner, Mr. Eglin, submitted an application in 2007. However, the Cameron minor permit was denied as the proposed development did not meet the required setback. The challenge is the effect of the erosion rate in the area of 3 feet per year, which is used to calculate CAMA setback from either the first line or from the static line to equate to 90 feet. From 93 to 2023, 30 years, the platted size of lot as measured from the approximate high water line, which has also receded, has been reduced from 26,630 square feet to 15,606.8 feet, or 41.4%. Comparing the approximate mean high water line from the plat, and I've already read that part, so I'll skip over that, but that's just a reiteration how this is not sound planning principles, and it's not in the interest of the public. Amending the zoning setbacks and granting variances in higher erosion rate areas to allow for development is counterintuitive to higher standards that the town has adopted in its hazard mitigation planning to protect the community. I'd like to say that one more time. Amending zoning setbacks and granting variances in high erosion rate areas to allow for development is counterintuitive to the higher standards that the town has adopted in its hazard mitigation planning to protect the community. This amendment does not improve consistency with the long-range plan, nor improve the tax base, nor preserve environmental or cultural resources, nor facilitates a desired kind of development, and is therefore not in the public interest. Change conditions warning the amendment would be things that could change that would warrant a consideration would be a reduced erosion rate and a successful beach nourishment project with the owners investing in sand fencing and planting sea oats, resulting in a stable building envelope. And that certainly is possible with the town's adoption of a beach nourishment plan and with the owner's active participation in sand fencing and planting sea oats. And I'll just reiterate on an additional statement on that would be the applicant's proposal to have the other properties rezoned also to where that it wouldn't be spot zoning is not sound planning. Okay.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
So right now as R20,
Yes, sir.
If we didn't do anything, since the lot is only 15,000 square feet, it could not be developed as currently. Is that correct?
I can't say that without a complete application package. Based on this survey provided by Mr. Kennedy, he indicates the building envelope on there. But I will also say that that first line that he has that frames the building envelope was done over a year ago. And so for anyone to have an accurate picture, that first line must be within the last 6 months, and that's per camera, really.
I have a question too.
Yes, ma'am?
Does 1078 New River Inlet Road understand the effects it could have on emergency vehicles before they stated that they'd be okay with?
I can't say what someone understands and doesn't
What
understand.
were they told?
Unless they read the report, unless they read my report, they would not know that that was a statement,
Concern, yeah.
a statement made by me. I will also
Okay.
say that I discussed emergency vehicle access with the fire chief,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a reasonable, truthful statement, and I stand by that statement I made.
Okay. My other question is it the water that they can't get or the sewer that they can't get?
Both water and sewer are available.
Okay.
Typically, that's kind of, it's almost archaic, not quite, where zoning, particularly when you go from rural to more urban areas, and where you have somewhere between the rural areas and the more urban areas, where you have public water and or public sewer available. And so you would certainly want a larger lot, for example, R20 or even RA, if you did not have both water and sewer. So in North Topsail Beach, where we have both water and sewer available to most all development, that point has almost, that distinction is almost moot, except for the demand of utilities that increase density places, not just on the utilities, but on the roadway and on the infrastructure, emergency services, et cetera.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, Deb.
Yes, ma'am.
In regard to the emergency vehicles, if you move that from the R20 to R15, there's already an issue there that would make it worse.
That's correct.
So even in the change conditions warning an amendment, and for the owners to reduce the erosion rate, even no matter what they did, planting COs or things, that still would be an issue unless you did do spot zoning.
If the whole issue with the access, and we're running into this more and more, and you're going to see this and hear this more and more, as we have gone from approximately a 70% build out to now we're looking in the sofa for loose change, right? I know that's kind of an extreme statement, but I'm just trying to make the point that easy rectangular lots that are not impacted by wetlands or mean high water lines, etc., are becoming fewer and fewer as the surge in development has and continues to increase. So when I do an analysis, I think I'm even more particular mindful, because when things were open, it's like we took for granted we had emergency vehicle access, fire trucks, ambulances, all the rest of it. And as things get tighter and tighter and tighter, I'm becoming more sensitive to, can I get a fire truck in there? And so I'm very mindful, or try to be very mindful, to run these situations by the fire chief. And if nothing else, it makes him aware of circumstances to where that he says, well, we'd have to fight it from the bridge. Okay. So if everybody's okay with the fire, with the fire truck being on the bridge and fighting fire from the bridge, then certainly that's not ideal. I would think that trees that have been since planted and cars that are parked in what was otherwise, back at the time that both of those houses were built, was a 40-foot access way. It was a 40-foot access way for a reason. But now that we're getting kind of jammed up by, or pushed forward, I guess is a better phraseology. Now that we're getting pushed forward because of the erosion rate and the approximate mean high water line, then we're starting to look, do I really need that 40 foot? Right? Well, perhaps you do to get a fire truck through there, because the trees aren't helping you out any. Parking the cars in there aren't helping out any. And so all these issues that we have lightly dealt with before, I anticipate that they are going to become burrs in our saddle, and we're going to have to address them or live with the consequences of increased density, even more so. And you've heard me, like Chicken Little, saying, increased density, increased density, and increased density. Part of that increased density is when we vacate easements, which are really, they may have served a purpose for open space or emergency vehicle access. And so we're waiving those off because we're fighting for every square inch of sand that we have in order to put a house, even a tiny home that's elevated on pilings, to be able to make residential use of that property where that envelope has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk.
So would it be fair to say that there already exists an issue with emergency vehicles going down that area, that if this passed, it would make it more challenging?
That is a correct statement, yes.
So you also, if I'm interpreting right, pretty much with the erosion rate being 3 feet per year, any development along New River Inlet Road on the ocean side will be very challenging, if at all possible.
That is correct. And not to be Debbie Downer, I'll be optimistic Kate for a minute. Again, with a successful beach nourishment program, and with the owner actively putting up sand fence, planting sea oats, a lot of people have been able to bring back what was formerly unbuildable lots, and it's taken them a couple of years, but they have, I can think of individuals, like I can see their face and I can hear their voice because they called me 18 times when I was the CAMA LPO. Deborah, can you come out and mark this first line? I marked it last month. There's not any change since last month. But he was a very nice individual and really struggling to maintain, his investment. And I will say that after 2 years, he was able to create a buildable lot, and he wound up selling it because at that point in time, he preferred living up on the north end on the sound side. But that certainly was, it was a good investment, but had he not nurtured it, I dare say that he would have been able to have sold it for what he sold it for and to brought it back.
And I've got 2 other quick questions. Is this property in the Cobra zone?
It is.
Okay, so then, does that fact that insurance may be very difficult to gather, that has no effect at all on our decision to rezone this property?
No, sir, because it does not and it should not. Even the structures that are next to them, any structure that's in the Cobra zone, as long as there is Cobra, if they were damaged or destroyed greater than 50% and had to be substantially rebuilt, they would lose that. If they had if they were eligible for federal flood insurance before that, they would lose that, and they would have to go to a private insurer. So that's all static. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball with regards to continuing Cobra, but starting out on a vacant lot, and it is in Cobra, a structure that, if there was a structure that was built tomorrow, it would not be eligible for federal funds. But there's private insurance in Lloyd's of London that is available if the owner did not want to be self-insured and wanted to have flood insurance.
But I think you answered the question, though. As far as the rezoning application, that insurance and COBRA zone, that is no consideration at all. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I would also say if somebody had, say, Oprah Winfrey walked in, or somebody that has more money than Oprah Winfrey, like somebody with the guy that owns Amazon, right? He walks in and he wants to rezone it, and he doesn't care even if it's like a little tiny thing. If it got wiped, if something happened to it, he would just rebuild it. He's got plenty of money. What do you care, right? Well, we don't care whether you have a lot of money or a little bit of money. And it's the same pendulum. How much money you have, one way or the other, doesn't matter. What does the Camel Land Use Plan say? What does the Comprehensive Plan say? What is reasonable planning? Does it meet the requirements? Does the application meet those 5 requirements per the North Carolina General Statute and per the UDO?
I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
The adjacent lots
Yes.
that are zoned the same,
Yes.
is it safe to assume that their erosion rate was the same or close?
It's certainly, I
Because
believe,
it's 3 feet
it's-
a year.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that, I only checked that particular lot, but I would think that I don't know where the boundary of that 3-foot erosion rate is. But I think that it is the same for the one that's immediate to the south.
Okay.
I'd have to double check that.
Second part of the question is, assuming a hurricane came and damaged those properties over 50%, would they be subject to the same setbacks as the new property is?
Those setbacks are established by Division of Coastal Management, Coastal Resource Commission.
Right.
So if the erosion rate is 3.0, then the small structure setback,
Is
regardless
40.
of where that is going to be 90 feet.
90 feet, okay.
Yep.
So that would be preferential treatment or something for this new property, this new build, over, assuming it passed and whatnot, over these other properties.
Just like I'll make the same statement to that question as I made to him rezoning, his offer to rezone the other properties to where that there's not spot zoning. The other properties would have to go through the same application process.
Right.
So we can't, there's really not, as much as we try to treat everybody fairly, and we try to treat everybody fairly, but until you have an actual application
Right.
in your
right.
hand, we can't make a determination. And that's why whenever you say,
Okay.
is it buildable? I can say, there's a plat of survey by the surveyor, although the first line was over a year ago, that denotes the building envelope. But it's too much liability, because there's too much liability for me to give a definitive answer, because there is always something, it seems like, that I am not aware of until I get that full application. V-zone certification, elevation certificate, engineered plans, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
It was not my mother. So, yeah. No other questions? So, Mr. Keaton or Mr. Soy, there you go. And do you need some more water?
No, good.
You all right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I should ask if you wanted some before we got started.
It's all right.
I can see everybody. So there's been a lot of discussion here, mostly about building, more so than about the zoning or the land that I've kind of noticed. If you look at what was provided with the zoning, we're talking about how much land has been lost. So going from low density, whenever we had land that went much further into the ocean, then we were meeting those low density requirements. But whenever you do lose land, then you're going to lose that you're going to have a higher density based on the fact that the land is no longer there. So the high density volume is based on the fact that there's one property, one house that's built per lot. Those lot distances are the same. That hasn't been changed. What has changed is how much land has been lost to the ocean. I'm not disputing we're in 3 foot per year, which in order to make sure that we're protecting the environment, protecting the community, CAMA sets up that you have to have a 90-foot setback. That doesn't change. None of that changes. If something were to happen with my neighbors and the area where it's a 3 foot loss per year, if they have more than 50%, then they would have to meet that 90-foot setback. So that doesn't change anything with rezoning it. The CAMA protections, all of that stays the same, regardless of whether this is rezoned or not. So that's kind of the one piece. The other thing that I heard mentioned a lot was if I do investment. So this is a Google picture from 2019. You can see whenever we did the beach nourishment, I didn't think this was going to come up, which is why it's not in the package, but I can provide this later if anybody would like. In fact, if you like to hand it around. So that's Google Street Images from 2019. You can see that the dune was pretty much wiped out whenever Florence came through. Mr. Eglin apparently tried to build a property in 2007, 17 years ago. I was not in the area 17, well I was in the Marine Corps, but I was not doing any of this 17 years ago. Where he tried to build, I can't say. I mean, if he tried to build within 30 feet from the dune, he's going to get his, he's going to be told he has to cease and desist and move back. Pretty much anywhere up and down the island, you'd be told you can't build there if you're trying to build within 30 feet of the dune. So I'm not for sure why Mr. Eglin's building was denied. It just says that he was building closer to the dune than he was supposed to. So I am not putting in a request right now. I'm putting in a zoning request to change how close to the road we can build. There was talk about, so to give an idea, this is just an example of the work that I have done to plant the dune. So that was 2019 that you have. This picture, I want to say it's about a year ago, so I'm going to say it's 2023 and maybe 2022. And this will show the property line, mine being on the right. Mr. Sutton from South Carolina owned this property at the time on the left. And this is what the town did with their beach nourishment. So that shows the effort that I put into building that. And so that just shows how much work I put in, watering it, making sure we had fertilization, buying the seagrass and planting it myself. I am the property on the right, yes ma'am. Additionally, speaking about easements, you'll see that there's a large dip in the middle of that property. That's referring to this as well. I'll pass this around. That's that same easement. So in working with CAMA, we had an issue where there were people that were walking across my property as well as Mr. Sutton's property. It's recently been rebought. And so I actually filed a police report because I was advised by CAMA that if I allowed people to continue to walk over the dune, they would eventually cut out a big notch in the middle of the dune, thus making it more dangerous for everyone in not just my property, but the entire block. I don't have a current picture, but if you were to drive by the property now, you'll see it's about a 4-foot dip in the dune where people are walking across from the sound side across the road over the dune right there, and they're making a huge cut through that property. That rope and piers that you see, it's kind of twofold. One, I'm showing that's where the property line is. So that's showing that right side is mine, left side is theirs. But if you look directly at the end of it, you'll see that there's a bunch of electrical equipment or plumbing that has been put there from either Jones Onslow, Jomsey, or on Wassa. So the intent that easement for a roadway was supposed to be maintained by the builders across the street before anyone built their property on the sound side. That was not the intent from the builder. So I had that right-of-way removed. It was supposed to be a roadway, a right-of-way for a roadway to connect the sound to the ocean. But that was done, I want to say, in 1959 or something like that. So with them not doing anything for well over half a century, I had that right-of-way removed so that people wouldn't be walking across my property, damaging the dune. As far as the 40-foot easement that's been discussed, unfortunately, a lot of that information was not 100% accurate. So I removed the 40-foot easement from my property. I did not remove the 40-foot easement from my 3 neighboring property. So originally that easement, the 40-foot from the road going towards the ocean, was put in place so that they could have a shared driveway or something like that. The people that are directly to my right, on the east side, they put in a gravel driveway, and they put in 2 or 3 deep railroad ties. So as far as emergency vehicle access, that won't be changed. So first off, there's 8 inches across the gravel to the railroad tie. So gravel plus 8 inches. And then on the other side, it's 11 inches down to just sand and bramble and everything. As well as, if you remember the Google picture, there's a line tensioner for the electric company that runs right through that same area. So as far as, fire or emergency vehicle whatsoever, accessing it from my property would be impossible for them to access the property to the houses that are currently built. As far as the easement that's in place, where it is that gravel driveway, that remains unchanged by the removal of the easement from my property. So my 3 neighbors further to the right, which I don't have it in front of me, they're not changed. Their access for emergency vehicle, police, fire, EMS is still unchanged based on anything having to do here. In order to avoid the rezoning or spot zoning to just mine, we feel that it makes sense that all of them are rezoned to R15 rather than just R20, because based on based on the dimensional requirements, table 5.1, which is page 18 of 38, we don't even meet the requirements of our lot size of 20,000 square feet anymore. Again, we have lost land to the ocean. But
Can I ask a question real quick?
well, ma'am, I'll let you go through without interrupting. Do you mind if I finish first?
Not at all.
Okay. And so it used to be over 20,000 square feet whenever CAMA put in their recommendation, as well as whenever it was zoned that. Because it's no longer zoned that, we're non-conforming lots. So we're requesting that we make the entire block of lots conforming lots by making it R15. That does also change the minimum distance setback from the road, which is something that is beneficial to me as well as my neighbors. But that doesn't take away from the bridge. If the entire block was changed to R15, all of the houses were destroyed. My 3 neighbors, well, my 2 neighbors. The third one has straight beach access. There's no issues with the bridge. There are 2 properties beside me. Naresh and Sarika's property, as well as Mr. Fleming's property, Dr. Fleming's property. Those are only 2 houses that are in front of that bridge. My property has some of the bridge, and some of it is wide open. Then there's Naresh and Sarika's property that is blocked by the bridge. But again, you can't access it from my property anyway, based on the railroad ties and the line tensioner from the electric company. Dr. Fleming's property is partially covered by it. It's where there's a little curve, and so you have a guardrail that's kind of looped around right there, and so you can access his property pretty directly from the road, but not entirely. And the next property over, Mr. Kniff's property, Cliff Kniff, he has complete regular access. He's not blocked by that bridge at all. Deb, did you have a question? Okay. Okay. So we talked about the purpose of the rezoning, not necessarily the building. We talked about the 90-foot setback, which would not be changed or affected by anything with this rezoning whatsoever. The only thing that would change with getting it rezoned as far as building would be that it would give me more land to build towards the road. And so that's the main purpose why I am requesting this zoning change. But it would also benefit my neighbors, because then if something did happen where their properties were decimated by a storm, more than 51%, they need to rebuild, that would give them an extra, 10 feet that they could potentially rebuild as well. So I have put in quite a bit of effort stabilizing the dune. I have put in quite a bit of effort trying to keep people from walking across the property to stabilize the dune. Whenever the property beside me was purchased, they put up the rope and pylon pathway. And so people drag coolers all across the dune. They drag all their beach stuff, and it's continuing to deteriorate there. I know that Mr. Riggs has put in a camera request in order to build something to get a crossover for them. I fully support that. I was given that information as they inform everyone, directly adjacent, and I had no complaints, no issues whatsoever. So we're trying to make it so that the dune is more protected, to protect the community, to make it safer. That's all I have this time, pending any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. No,
Okay,
thank you for.
thank you.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Toby Keaton. I'm with Kirsting Architecture, located in Wilmington, North Carolina. I've been engaged by the Soys to help them in this rezoning process. See, as you mentioned, we haven't embarked on any kind of building design effort yet. Obviously, we want to determine the rules and what we can and can't do before we undertook anything like that. But as an architect, I can't help but project forward and think about, okay, what am I going to be tasked with given a certain site, given conditions. And a lot of the ways that we think about zoning and especially considerations of things like rezoning is stepping back and kind of looking at the point of zoning regulations in the first place, right? So I would argue that zoning regulations are put forward to for many reasons, but one of the biggest ones is to maintain consistency with the surrounding area, to present a consistent, somewhat uniform built fabric that speaks to one. Nothing should really be so inconsistent and incompatible with its surrounding areas that there are negative effects that can come from that. So the idea of increasing the buildable area towards the street, and if you read my letter, we go through some of these points. The big idea there is to create dimensional opportunities, basically, to design a building that is more consistent with surrounding areas. A lot has been discussed thus far under the presumption that the lot as it exists, and conceding that the CAMA line needs to be updated, and we need to figure out exactly what area we're dealing with. But as Mr. Soy pointed out, we're not challenging the 3-foot erosion rate or wanting to move that 90-foot line at all, except for by the means available to him, which is planting it out and doing it the right way. No matter what we do, the next steps here in the process are going in front of CAMA with a building permit set, and if that crosses the line given to us, yes, it's going to be done. You can't do it, right? So a lot of that about the 2007 plan, it doesn't really seem too relevant to bring up something that didn't conform to the dimensional standards at that time, because if we don't conform to the dimensional standards of the setbacks of the CAM at this time either, of course, we can't do anything about that. So the idea of moving the lot line closer to the street, it creates building forms that are more consistent with the surrounding areas. The lot as it is right now, or as it is given the dimensions from the survey a year ago, does present buildable area. I mean, by right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Deb, but a 15,000 square foot lot, right, in an R20 area, still built upon. I believe that it's considered a non-conforming lot, and there are a few extenuating dimensional standards in the zoning code but ultimately you have the same setbacks everybody else in R20 has, and you can design something and put in there. The other point that I wanted to make is totally conceding the importance of emergency vehicles and their access. Typically, in my experience, that's more of a right-of-way issue. We're talking about an area on people's property, from the front of a property line to a structural setback. So we can't build a building past that setback. There's a lot of things that can happen in, let's say that stays R20, in that area by right between that structural setback and that front property line that would preclude emergency service vehicles from driving over it. Mailboxes, vegetation, fences, things that are allowed in that zone under the current zoning. So that also doesn't seem like a truly applicable comparison from moving one from one zone to the other. And then the other point that I wanted to make, something that Deb said I wanted to correct. She made a comment that the CAMA land use plan, so that's the plan that you all are supposed to use as your guide in making these determinations. It has different designations of density: low density, medium density, high density. Low density is considered, the allowable density is 2 units per acre. Medium density is 4 units per acre. If you do the math on this, it's, at least my math comes up with something like 2.75 dwelling units per acre, which you said it was closer to medium than low, and actually it's closer to low than it is the medium. It's 0.75 away from the kind of pure low, and 1.25 away from kind of the pure medium. So it's a little bit closer to low density. And I will also just make the point that, if you were to look at the CAMA land use map that has the future recommended densities for this area, the entire context of the neighborhood is medium density. Only these adjacent lots, I want to say there's 5 lots, are designated as low density. Of all of those lots, I believe the Soys lot is the largest of all those lots at 15,000 some square feet currently, right? So if you do the math, 1 unit per 15,000 square feet is never going to get to low density for any of those lots. It's physically impossible. You can't do it. Now, I concede that if you were to build a duplex, which are 15, on there, then you increase that density and it starts to compound from there. But, that, is, I don't know if there's a potential for a conditional rezoning, which is also present in the immediate vicinity, is conditional R15 conditioned to be single family. So I don't know if that's a consideration that you as the planning board want to consider in your recommendation. Is any kind of the conditions like that. But that's pretty much it. I just wanted to make some of those clarifications. If you guys had any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. But
I had a question,
Sure.
sir. Did you say that if the zone does not change from
Yeah.
R20 to R15, you still can build a house?
yes, so my understanding of what would dictate of whether or not this lot is buildable or not is basically the North Carolina Building Code, residential building code, has minimum room dimensions, basically, or minimum, right? You can fit those minimum you can fit habitable space. So what creates a habitable space? Some place to sleep, some place to eat, like a kitchen, some place to go to the bathroom, right? You can fit all three of those code minimum areas. Conceding that we're looking at a survey from a year ago, but let's assume that that's the way it is, you know, but.
So
yeah.
you wouldn't be able to, the reason then for your
Yeah.
change of the
Yeah.
zone would be so you could build something bigger with more room.
If you look at the devil's in the details in terms of the actual shape of that buildable area. It's this wedge, right? So you could presumably build a structure that fits in that thing, but it's gonna take on the shape of that wedge because it has to like fit in there or whatever.
So,
To use a non-technical term, it's gonna look weird potentially compared to.
so
other,
really
you know.
it comes down to the benefit of going from R20 to R15
Yeah.
is that you could build closer, the setback from the street would be
Yeah.
less.
It would be less,
And you could build a larger house.
Yeah, you build a larger house that's frankly more of a shape of a box than a wedge, basically, which would be more consistent with the surrounding area.
If I may add,
Sure.
so just for clarification, if the first line is stable if that first line is still current as depicted on the plat submitted by your
Sure.
surveyor, on the south side of the Soys lot where it says 13 feet, it would simply add 10 feet to that 13 feet to where the depth of your building
Yeah.
envelope would be 23 feet instead of
Yeah.
13 feet. Is that correct?
Yes, at the largest, again, it's the wedge shape, so it's creating a fatter portion of the wedge that you could put a more squarish building within, if that makes sense.
And so do you know what the depth of that building envelope is in the center of that lot?
It's about, I got the top of my head off of, it's 10-ish feet or something like that.
Because it's down to 3 on the north
On the
side.
very
So
end, yep.
it goes from, currently it goes from
Yeah.
13 feet down to 3 feet.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
somewhere in the middle between
Yep,
26,
yep,
13, 19, 16, so probably 8 feet,
yeah, sure,
8 feet.
yeah.
Am I correct that there are also different other setbacks besides the front setback for?
Yeah, there are side setbacks
setback
that
is
create this
different
wedge.
as well.
Yeah. And I'm sorry if I'm ignorant of this, Deb, but I don't believe that changes from R15 or to the sides change. I can't.
I think it's 8 feet on R15.
Okay.
For R20, it's 10 feet on the sides.
Okay.
Side yard corner is like on
Yeah.
like you got a street on the front and then a street on the side. So you'd be 15 feet off.
Yeah.
That's not applicable.
And I'm not. I also should clarify. I'm speaking in totally hypotheticals. I've not spoken to Mr. Soy about a wedge-shaped building or anything like that. I'm speaking about like this box that is created by the zoning stuff or whatever. I'm not proposing a building at all. But.
So even with the rezoning, if it was approved, you're really not gonna get a very big house. I mean,
No, there's never. I mean,
If
it's
it's
not.
if it's
yeah.
one story,
Sure.
approximately what would it be? 1,200 feet? 1,200 square feet?
If it's, I mean, we're in a VE flood zone, so we're talking about something that's, on
Right, up on the
piles
stilts, I understand that.
And raised. So each of the floor plates, if we were to rezone, would be, this is total guess, but maybe 500 square feet. I don't know, and then, so you would be able to put as many floor plates as you can between, the bottom of the where the flood
Up
zone
to
is,
48 feet
up
from
to
the top of the
up to
concrete
height
slab. We have a
limit,
building
yeah.
height
Yeah,
limitation.
exactly. Yeah.
So you really only looking at potentially a 500 or 1,000 square foot house?
Whatever that it would be.
And that's with
you
the
know.
rezoning.
Yeah, it would be whatever the building area would
So
afford
without
at
the
that point.
rezoning, it would be even smaller.
potentially, yeah. Yeah, without the rezoning, it would be, you know, more, yeah, a little bit more. It may be, yeah, a little bit more than that. Yeah. But I will say, and this is just my, you know, opinion as a designer, the proportions of, you know, the larger box would afford better architecture, better detailing, things like that, that would feel more appropriate.
Does anybody have any more questions?
Just for Deb about the emergency access, did you visit the site with Chad?
I didn't visit the site, I reviewed the plat and the aerial with him. He was familiar with the trees, he made a comment about the trees. I discussed, I didn't do a site visit, I reviewed the plat with the fire chief as well as the aerial with him and discussed the trees and the effects of parking cars in the trees and being able to get a fire truck down through there.
Any other questions?
Do you mind if I confer with my client really quickly? Just ask him a question.
Go ahead.
So, before I said this out loud, I wanted to, you know, confirm that he was amenable to this. But if the concern is emergency vehicle access, like I said, like right now in R20 zone, whatever, there are front yard encroachments that are allowable, you know, mailboxes, all those things like that. Another condition that my client would possibly be amenable to is some kind of condition on this property that in that front setback, which we can't build structure over anyway, he would have limited front yard encroachment ability. You could say you can't put a mailbox there, you can't plant stuff there, and so in this conditional zoning, you can actually provide a better access. You know, we can only control our lot and what we do on our lot, but for this lot, you could actually make a better situation for the emergency vehicles through a condition that my client would then be held to.
Unfortunately, and I want to address this to the planning board as well as let you know, when you're doing an analysis or considering a rezoning application, you don't have this is a legislative decision, not a variance, where
Sure.
variances you could place conditions on
Sure.
it. With a rezoning in North Carolina, that would be illegal.
Sure.
Some states do allow proffers. North Carolina is not one of them. So it's just the same as if you said, well, we just want you to build a single family. He could say yes, but then turn around and I would have no choice but to sign off on a duplex, and then you're mad at me because, and then I'm just going to look at you and say, well, I told you have to consider all uses. You know what I mean? So the North Carolina general statutes in 160D is very explicit, and that's one of the reasons why they came out with 160D, is to standardize what we can and cannot do. So you have before you what your responsibilities tonight are in the analysis, and then a written recommendation to the Board of Aldermen.
Which is reasonable. But this isn't the first time that we've interacted specifically about this property. I mean, Deb, you and I corresponded along with me and the city manager, as well as I communicated with the city attorney whenever we were trying to have the easement removed that was supposed to connect the sound to the ocean. And so we said, you know, at that time we thought the town had the authority to remove it. We didn't realize that it wasn't actually a state road. And we said, if you remove this, we'll give you an easement for beach nourishment. That didn't happen, and so obviously that didn't go through completely. But I plan on being around for a long time. I also own 3870 Island Drive, which is just south of Beach Bums. It's one of the middle. It's the middle unit of one of the triplexes that Ricky Bumgardner built, and that's also in a Cobra zone. But if you go down there, you can see that I did beach nourishment there as well. Whenever the sand was brought in, we planted all that area, and we got more ground there compared to our neighbors. I plan on doing the same thing with this property if I can actually build a residence there. So I understand that you can't say, you know, I will not build a duplex if this, but I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to build a duplex. So hope that helps.
My one concern, though, is that it's still a high erosion rate area.
Which is the entire, I mean, it's not, I mean, if you think about it, the entire island is a high erosion rate area. I
The
mean, we all have-
the entire island is not 3.0.
They are not 3.0, but for this whole section, I mean, it's just because we have the erosion, that's why CAMA has set up that 30 times rule. And so, you know, I don't know if you realize, but 90 feet is quite a ways back. And we're talking about, you know, the city has talked with City of Engineers about, you know, redoing the inlet, and 1090 New River Inlet Road, I think, is the last property that would benefit from that, where we would actually be better protected and it would actually add more sand
But
onto our
it's-
property.
My
So-
concern is that it is counterintuitive to the standards that the town has set forth to try to mitigate this going forward. And so that's my area of concern.
Yeah, just to address that concern. Again, that whatever that CAMA line, that erosion rate said, whatever, nothing we do can cross that and get closer to and make this, you know, more precarious by moving past that line. What we're specifically asking for here is wiggle room away from that line, right? So the building that I can design, given the rezoning that we're asking for, gives me the best opportunity, which is just a best practice in design that we always take, to pull this thing as far off that line as we possibly can, given the R20 and the existing building footprint, just to fit in code minimum standards in this thing. You would be forced to build as close to that line as possible. Does that make sense?
It does,
The
but-
rezoning actually helps what you're concerned with.
Right, but I guess my question then to you, Deb, would be, if we left it R20 and they built what they could build within that standard, where does that put us with being counterintuitive to the standards the town has set?
If he has a wedge, thank you. Wedge shaped envelope, and it's 13 feet, whatever it is on one side, 3 feet on the other side, regardless of what it is. And he builds something akin to either a tiny house or single wide mobile homes are 14 feet. So if it's something akin to that, and as long as it met the building code, then it meets the building code. And that's why we have codes that are, 4.0 feet, 48.0 feet, where there's finite numbers and zoning districts and setbacks. When you say that there's a 3-foot erosion rate and the setback is 90 feet, and you say that there's nothing that you can do about that, I would tend to disagree with that statement, because you could always apply to the CRC for a variance even after the town did a rezoning. Nothing would stop you from going to the CRC and requesting a variance on that 90-foot setback.
Exactly, which is why the rezoning, which, you know, again, allows us to put something far away from that area as
Well,
we
it
can.
would be to, you could reduce, come to the planning board and the Board of Aldermen and request a rezoning from R20 to R15, reduce that front setback from 30 feet to 20 feet, and then go to the CRC and apply for a variance on that 90-foot setback.
I believe, and I'm no expert on the CRC procedures, but I believe or an understanding that in order to be considered or be favorably considered there, you would have to basically exhaust all other options to kind of fix your situation, which an option here would be, it seems, to get this rezoning and be able to build a building footprint that's, you know, within the where the erosion rate puts the line now and where the local zoning code has to. It seems that denying the rezoning request might, you know, it might be that prerequisite that we've exhausted other options and now we have to go for a variance. So, you know, we obviously reserve all, you know, options, you know, on the table to just as any other citizen has. But we really sincerely believe that the rezoning on the table is the best solution for everyone, you know. Unless anybody has any questions for me, I think I've concluded.
Okay. If the planning board members don't have any further questions, would you like to proceed to develop your statements?
Yes?
Okay, all right. Do you mind if we take like a little 5-minute recess? Is that okay?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, there you go.
Meeting is back in order.
Okay. Sorry.
I guess I call for a motion and then we discuss.
You can do it however you would like to do it. If you could even ask the clerk to, like, if you wanted to say is or is not, you could ask the clerk to poll the board. And so each of the for the first one, you've got two questions. If you want to break it down to the two questions, that the proposed zoning amendment is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan, and ask the clerk to poll the board, and then each member state whether it, I believe that it is or I believe that it is not, and then come to a consensus on the first one, and then come to a consensus, do the same thing on the second one, and then go back to the first one and have a discussion amongst yourselves on why you believe that it was consistent with the comprehensive plan, or why you believe that it was not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And the same thing for the second one, why it was reasonable and in the public interest, or why it was not reasonable and not in the public interest. And whether it did or did not support the comprehensive policies above because blah, blah, blah. And you don't have to come up with, there's not a set number, but to reflect upon specifically what in the comprehensive plan supported it, what in the comprehensive plan or did not support it, and the same thing for the other one. Does that make sense? So you certainly can have a conversation first. To cut to the chase, you could ask the clerk to pull the board for, you could read the statement, Madam Chair, and then ask the clerk to pull the board for is or is not, for matters of discussion. Right?
So the first whole big statement or the proposed amendment is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan because.
Leave out the because part and just tackle the proposed zoning amendment is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan.
And that's it.
And that's it. And then ask the clerk to pull the board for is or is not, and just go down the roll.
Okay. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say the proposed zoning amendment is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And Madam Clerk, could you poll the board?
Ms. Brown?
I feel like we need a discussion before I have an opinion.
Mr. Morse?
Discussion.
Ms. Meyer?
I guess I'm going to go with discussion.
Mr. Fontana?
Yeah, I'd like to have a little more discussion on what the comprehensive plan says.
Ms. Ward?
I'll go with my colleagues.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for discussion.
So this is a question for Deb. Exactly, does the comprehensive plan, does it call for this property to remain R20 and the surrounding areas R15? Or what zoning does the comprehensive plan recommend for this particular stretch of New River Inlet Road?
Okay, the comprehensive plan, we're looking at the big plan for the town, not drilling down to like specific lots, except where you look at the existing land use plan, which existing land use map, and then the future land use map. So for the future land use map, it lists that property and the properties beside it as low density. So that kind of sets your path or your guidance, okay?
So,
And so there's other policy statements. So in this whole, I brought it down here. I should have tabbed each one of the policy statements, but you could probably go through there and flip until you hit like 55 and 25 and the rest of them. But there's a lot of narrative. There's a lot of information throughout the Campbell Land Use Plan, the comprehensive plan. But the enforceable items, because it's a CAMA land use plan, are the policy statements. And those policy statements carry the same weight, if not more so, than what the zoning ordinance does. Okay?
Well, can I just ask one more question then on, I believe it was Mr. Keaton that said that it was closer to a single family, zoning with that 1.75 or whatever number he used, or 2.75 was closer to the low density than it was to the medium density. Is he correct in saying that, or is it just the way you calculate?
You also have to consider that please keep in mind that you also have to consider all uses. Okay? So what's the matrix on? Page four something, I should have done that and I didn't do it. I think he had it in his application as well. There we go.
I guess just to play devil's advocate, my
Okay.
point is,
So
we already talked about the house or whatever gets built there would be really tiny. A duplex would be super tiny. If
it would still be considered 2 units for that, because you go by the acres. So where low density is considered 2 dwelling units per acre, which is an acre, 1 unit per half acre. So if medium is 4, then you're looking at 1 unit per quarter acre, so it would be 4 times the density of low density. So low density is 1 unit per half acre. An acre is 43,560 square feet, I believe.
Yeah, I can clarify that statement if you'd like.
please do.
Not my time to talk, but, yeah, and, if you have it in front of you, you can, it's included in the letter that I included in the application. But there's a table in the CAMA land use plan, that has X's and G's on it in terms of whether something is compatible with what's considered, the type of development that it should happen, in any given area. If you go from R15 and go across, you'll see that both low and medium density have G beside it, that they're generally consistent with the CAMA land use plan. So even if,
It's in the narrative. I'm sorry, it's in the narrative.
even if you were to make the determination, okay, this is closer to medium density, the CAMA land use plan in that table still says that it's generally consistent with, the type of development that should happen. R15 is generally consistent with the type of development that should happen on this property.
Yeah. Going to the low density and the medium density, the medium density is 4 units per acre. And like high density is considered 8 units per acre, but if you want to focus on just the medium density, you're looking at 1 unit per quarter acre. And
We're looking at about a third of an acre.
yeah.
Which is what the other properties currently are too.
Yeah, if not a little less,
About a third of an acre.
So, just the dimensional characteristics of the lots in this area, we'll never be able to get down to, the 2 acre thing, which is I can't get into the minds of the people that prepared the CAMA land use plan, but it's generally, I believe, probably why they put a G in R15 next to, whether it would be, if it's generally consistent or not, so.
They didn't put a condition whether it was single family or whether it was a duplex. of course, that doubles it. Then whenever you look at going to R10 and R5, where you have multifamily and townhouses, it's either going to fit or there's a general statement that generally it does fit. So it's going to be up to your interpretation whether the proposal meets the low density requirements of the future land use plan. And if it doesn't, and you wanted to approve it anyway, then you could provide a justification for that. If you wanted to recommend, say you wanted to recommend approval, even though the future land use plan said low density, if that was say if you made that recommendation, the board approved the rezoning, and it changed it from low density to medium density, that would automatically amend that future land use plan. It would automatically change that.
In essence, setting precedents. Okay.
And it's not to say that you can't do it, but it's strongly recommended that if you do something like that, and if you do set precedents, that you provide, for the record, a rationale or a justification of why you came to that decision or conclusion. And do you see how that's designed to keep you consistent, right? But there may be times that, like I say, not everything is a cookie cutter. So there may be times when you have to depart from what that rule is, and you can do that. It's a legislative decision. Just put your rationale down.
R20 is low density and medium density?
R20 is low density.
R15
R15 is considered generally consistent with both low and medium.
Okay, but this lot does not meet the low density criteria.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Well, did you have
just
any?
more discussion.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions or statements?
The comprehensive plan is based upon the low-density residential.
Can you rephrase that for me?
In order to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, we are saying it's consistent with low-density.
That is a true statement.
Residential.
That's correct. I would agree with that.
So it could be consistent with the plan, but by rezoning, they still have the option to make it inconsistent. Is what it amounts to.
Can you restate that, please?
If they use it, develop the property as in a low density form,
Right.
it would be consistent with the plan. But but by rezoning doesn't preclude them from building a medium density structure, which would then make it inconsistent.
That's true. I would agree with the second part. I would agree with the second part of that.
And we have no control over that.
I've got a question about the spot zoning.
Okay.
I know that they have spoken with 2 other lot holders in that 5-block R20 section. And they said that they would be amiable to requesting rezoning. However, that doesn't mean that they're going to come forward and ask to have their lots rezoned as well.
One, it doesn't mean that they're going to do it,
Right.
which is, to me, of no consequence, because the second issue is they would have to meet those same requirements. They still have to meet the same 5 conditions from the UDO and the North Carolina General Statutes, as well as be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So do I have an answer for that right now at this moment? No, because they've not submitted an application and I've not had the opportunity to do an analysis of it. But to rezone other property, so you're not spot zoning, to me is an attempt to circumvent the objections to spot zoning to begin with. If you were going to rezone property and it was spot zoning, there may be a reason that you may want to do that. And if you did, and it was spot zoning, then say you wanted to, I'm trying to think of like some use, like a store or something. Say on the corner that you wanted to put in this residential area, on the corner you wanted to put or allow for a like a neighborhood 7-Eleven or a little store, little drop-in store or something. Then and if that current zoning was the same as all the rest of it, say it was R10, R5, whatever, then you'd have to like rezone that to commercial to allow for that use, because your uses have to go with the zoning, right? And typically you don't allow stores in residentially zoned property. You might if it was like zoned mixed use, where you do have residential and commercial, but where it was all historically R10, and say you had 50 people from the neighborhood saying, I'm getting tired of having to drive 30 miles to a grocery store. That would be nice if we had a little corner store or a little corner market. And if you wanted to allow that, even though it was not consistent with what you had, you could still do it, especially because the next question is, does it serve the public, or how do they phrase that?
Public interest.
Does it serve the public interest? Well, you've got 50 people in the neighborhood saying, I'd really like a corner store so I don't have to drive 30 minutes. Then you go, based upon public support and, statements, you believe that it provides that public interest. So it's not completely inflexible. It is a guideline. But if you depart from that guideline, you have to provide your justification. Otherwise, provide where it is consistent or not consistent. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Any other discussion? I'm going to revisit and I guess ask for a motion.
Do you,
Or should we go ahead and poll us again?
I would recommend that you have the
Poll.
clerk re-poll
Okay,
for the first one.
all right. So the proposed zoning amendment is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. Could we please poll the board?
Ms. Brown?
No.
Mr. Morse?
Is not.
Ms. Meyer?
Is not.
Mr. Fontana?
Is not.
Ms. Ward?
Is not.
And then would you like to have a discussion on the statements relative to
The
why
button.
it is not? And if you wanted to adopt the inconsistency with 25, 52, and 55, you're more than welcome to, or if there's other statements that you wanted to add, you could certainly do that. It doesn't, like I said, it does not have to be, a dissertation, just a justification of why you believe that it is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, and I would recommend that you certainly use those policy statements.
Do we need to move forward also with the proposed zoning amendment is not, or reasonable and not in the public best interest?
If you wanted to do that and then go back and do your justifications for both, whatever makes it easier, whatever makes it easier for you, or whatever your preference is.
Okay, I think we're gonna go ahead and do the proposed zoning amendment is not reasonable and not in the public interest because it does not support the comprehensive plan policies. Can we poll the,
So you want me to ask if people think that it is or is not reasonable?
No,
they can say is
Or is
or
not.
is not.
Okay.
Okay,
Ms. Ward?
thank you.
Is not.
Mr. Fontana?
Is not.
Ms. Meyer?
Is not.
Mr. Morse? Is not. Ms. Brown?
Is not.
Okay, now we can go back and state our reasoning, correct? Does anybody want to do we need to make a motion on our reasoning or just,
if someone had this formulated, how they wanted to present it, they could make a motion that you recommend to the Board of Aldermen to either grant the rezoning or deny the rezoning based on the proposed zoning amendment is not consistent with the comprehensive plan, and then for what, if they had a reason or a statement or a bucket, and then the same thing
for the,
for the proposed zoning for the second one, and then what the rational basis was for the second one.
okay. Does anybody have something formed?
Well, I would say the second part with the, in the public interest is not in the public interest. Mostly because of the items that are listed here, concerned about the erosion rate and pretty much most of all of it about the erosion rate. And so that's the primary reason why I see that as being
Mine.
inconsistent with public interest.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, I think it's counterintuitive to the town's standards for the hazard mitigation planning.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Before she does that, or I could discuss during discussion, but is number one not necessarily, it provides a lot of detail, but I'm not sure. I can't, oh, I can now. Someone must have turned off. I think in our reasoning on the second half, we do address the, well, or maybe we could restate the erosion without talking about the 2007 event, because I don't think the 2007 event is necessarily part of our reason.
Well, I think it is to I mean, and maybe not the first paragraph of part two. The second paragraph where it shows what it was in
Yes.
2007 and compared to 2021 confirms the erosion rate.
Oh, I agree with you there. I thought we had that further along, and as I read it, I'm realizing the second paragraph is relevant, the first sentence where we're talking about something was not approved in 2007
Right, that's not relevant.
that's where I'm going.
Right.
So are you suggesting that we remove the last sentence from the second paragraph?
The
The
first,
sentence that says the methodology would be consistent with Mr. Eglin's inability to obtain camera minor permit in 2007?
yes, I would propose that as well. So the first sentence and the last sentence in number 1.
So you'd like to do the challenge is the effect of the erosion rate? And that, well, that whole sentence,
Yeah.
right? Would anybody like to put a motion forward with their particular reasonings? And we can discuss it further.
Well, one reason it's not listed here with the public interest was we had talked about emergency vehicles having access to the property. And I think that should be added as number 5. I don't know what the wording would be with the rezoning would restrict access by emergency vehicles to the property, something along those lines.
What's the statement?
So is that a motion?
That's more discussion.
Discussion still? Okay.
Okay, now I can make a motion that we say that it is not, the rezoning is not consistent with the comprehensive plan because of the, well, let me strike that. The proposed rezoning is not reasonable in the public interest because it does not support the comprehensive plan policies as listed in number 1 with the exception of, also by removing first sentence in paragraph 1 and the last sentence in the second paragraph under 1.
Yep.
And items 2, 3, and 4, and then also adding rezoning would restrict access to the property for emergency vehicles.
Do I hear a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, is there any more discussion on the motion? Okay.
Sorry, in the wording on number 5, if we say, I think you said would restrict, maybe could restrict.
Or may restrict. How about may restrict?
Okay. Would we like to amend the motion to say may instead of would?
Yes.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of Fred's motion?
Aye.
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 I'm sorry.
Motion passed?
Who was the second on the amended motion?
I think Terry was.
Yes. Okay, moving on to the proposed zoning amendment is not reasonable in the public interest because it does not support the comprehensive plan policies above because,
You just did that one.
okay, that's the one we did,
Yeah,
okay.
the one above it, the proposed zoning amendment is or
Is
is not consistent with the comprehensive plan
comprehensive
because. And for the one that you just did, you referenced the, policies above. And so if you're okay with 52, 25, and 55 as they are, or if there's any of those that you would like to add, delete, or, those are the statements, straight out. But specifically, if you go back to, it's either that, if you wanted to just list those statements. Or if you wanted to do, promoting the development of properties that have been deemed unbuildable due to either state or local, development regulations is inconsistent with, and then 25 and 52, and then the application is inconsistent with the future land use map, low density requirement, and then, that's policy 55. That's part of the staff report for the compatibility with the comprehensive plan.
I'll make a motion that we use the language that is on page 2 here with compatibility with the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Okay, do I hear a second?
A second.
Okay. Any more discussion on this?
For point of clarification, you would make a recommendation that the Board of Aldermen approve or deny the rezoning request.
Okay. Before or after this? After this. That's what I was thinking. Okay, all those in favor of Lisa's motion?
Oh, sorry.
Is that right?
Lisa, can you restate the motion? I'm a little confused on this one.
The motion is to, at the language that we're debating here, which is to say, the proposed zoning amendment is not consistent with the comprehensive plan because, and then take the block of information that Deb has at the top of the second page of this packet and use that information as our reasoning. Starting with promoting.
Okay. Are you, everybody clear on that? Okay. Could you poll the board? Oh.
Ms. Ward,
Yes.
Mr. Fontana,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Mr. Morse,
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Okay, now we need to make a recommendation to send our recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for their consideration.
I move to send our recommendation to not approve the proposed zoning amendment to the Board of Aldermen.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on that, really? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion, all motions passed, and we're going to send it on to the Board of Aldermen. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. You'll have another opportunity with the Board of Aldermen. Okay.
And I'll let you know as soon as I can get that advertised and shooting for, their meeting on August the 7th. Okay. If not then if that doesn't work out, then I'll let you know what date.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
But we'll shoot for the.
Sounds great.
Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.